So today we're going to be talking about cognitive bias. I think it's important because it affects our daily processes and life so extremely that it's just in everything we do and how we perceive the world. Like what we get out of the world and our internal world is controlled by confirmation bias and cognitive bias.
Without us even knowing. Yeah. I want to start with a quote that I just thought of. I forget exactly who said it, but it's we question all the beliefs except for the ones we really believe and those we never think to question. So I think that sums up cognitive bias pretty well. Like, it's not about the ones you're aware of, it's about the ones that you're not aware of.
Yeah.
And those are the ones you really got to try and look out for because they really shape the way you look at the world.
Yeah. I think it's an important concept because it kind of makes you reflect on this unconscious thing that just happens, and it's why we believe the things we believe and why we're so different. Well, why it seems like we can be so different or have polar opposite views with other people. It's because we have an internal structure that's seeking to confirm the prior things we already have in our brains. So cognitive bias is basically understanding that information that is posing to you will seem threatening and in turn, or hard to deal with or comprehend. So in turn, we usually just discount what we don't believe to be true and use information that already fits with our beliefs and to confirm our prior beliefs.
Yeah. And it's usually people who can sit in discomfort for the longest period of time often can get a little bit closer to the truth because it's neither what you think or what the opposing point of view is. It's usually somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And if you can sit with two contradictory beliefs for long enough to sort of weigh them up, you can get further towards the truth than if you were to just, discard it, discount it, and, shoot the messenger almost.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to also think about it in terms of there's a theory called dual processing theory by Daniel Kahn. Is that how you say his last name? Kahneman. And he won the Nobel Prize for this distinction. He was saying that there's two systems of thinking. System one is automatic, intuitive, and it's confirmation bias, basically. It's just like, oh, yeah, that makes sense, or I'm just going to go with my gut feeling and listening to those kind of bodily sensations and just being like, yeah, or no. And then system two thinking is much harder, much more cognitive work because it takes more energy to think and process fully rather than just going with your gut reaction or instant reaction. So, yeah, it takes more energy and it's a lot more slower because it's thought out. We can't be running in system two thinking all the time because it is so straining on our resources mentally. It just takes a lot of energy. But it's also good to know that it's there. So if you're in a disagreement with somebody, you could be like, oh, okay, and really, really think about it and kind of go, oh, why doesn't it fit with my internal view or belief? What are the points and what are the similarities too? Not taking it as those instant feelings and reaction, but processing it a bit more and understanding, oh, okay, well, I don't understand this bit, but this bit I might understand a bit more. So it's a concept that is fairly abstract, but was really influential in psychology and influence, and therefore won the Nobel Prize because of it. Yeah. Another thing that was interesting too is there's this thing called Popper's confirmation bias, and it's basically Popper was a science guy and he viewed
Popper was a science guy.
So Popper was a scientist who
Is he
thought...
brothers with Bill Nye?
I don't know what that means.
You don't get the joke?
No, I don't get...
You don't know who Bill Nye is?
No.
Bill Nye, the
science guy. Oh, yeah, true.
Anyway.
Yeah, so Popper was this scientist who thought like science was going down the wrong path and basically was like, so he was seeing what was currently going on with scientists were just trying to confirm their prior hypotheses. He thought that science should be the opposite, so science should try and disconfirm hypotheses, which was an interesting perspective because still to this day, science is kind of all about like choosing a theory to create hypotheses based on that and then try and confirm them. And then if they like the whole aim is to prove that the theory is correct or the hypothesis is correct, not trying to falsify them. But when we go back to Kahneman's thinking, that obviously shows that system 2, if you were to really think it through and try and disconfirm or put more cognitive thinking into it, it's a lot harder. And also our brains seem to be kind of built for system 1 thinking because it's built more for survival and to go off our basic instincts and bodily reactions. So it's interesting to think about how even in the field of like science today, that is still like confirmation bias is still like a huge thing and it's everywhere. So yeah, it's something that is helpful to try and integrate into your life because I think you get a wider world view of what's going on if you try and incorporate multiple theories and multiple ideas, and yeah, just differentiation is healthy. Can you think of a time where confirmation bias happens a lot for you?
Every second of every day.
So like, what's an example?
Like, I mean, every action that I do is in service of a belief that I have. Like, I eat because I believe that if I don't eat, I'll die.
So right down to like the fundamentals of just like living, not even in like...
Well, I don't consciously think about it because that's the whole definition.
Yeah. I think like stereotypes also come into it in a large way because stereotypes are basically using a prior internal image of something or someone and then relating it to your preconceived idea of what that person should be or what they do or something like that. So it's also like in our perceived image of things too.
Yeah, but I don't think we should remove it entirely. Like, I feel like the frame we've kind of used so far has been like a
Negative.
thing we need to overcome. But I do think it is very tightly interwoven with the law of attraction. Like, the only reason you can create things from a thought is the fact that when you have a thought, you can then begin to believe it. And if you begin to believe it, you begin to see things that are in accordance with that belief. And it just snowballs into something that becomes true for you.
Yeah. Or that kind of just manifests, like it becomes something physical.
Yeah, well, for example, like if you wanted to buy a particular car, you begin, like your RAS, your reticular activating system, it filters all the information that comes into your brain and it kind of discards what's relevant and what's not. And that sort of process is determined by your bias and a million other things as well. But you begin to see that car everywhere. You see that your cousin just bought it as well, and you see it on the road everywhere. And you might begin to look it up online, see how much it costs, what the payment plans are, even to the point where what type of budget you would need to have it, like
Yeah.
all of these things. And then eventually, if you want something, you begin to convince yourself that you can have it.
You try and work out ways in your head of how you could get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you don't really aspire to something you truly believe you can't have or you don't want.
Yeah. That's like, there's this theory called the theory of planned action. And it basically talks about how in order to influence your actions. You have like your set attitude, then you have if you perceive yourself as being able to do something or not. So it's like, do you believe that you can change like your weight or something? Like, what is like the core belief that like influences your intention, then influences your action? So it's like, that is a huge thing. And then like the other parts in it too is like the social norms, or like what you're surrounded by too influences your intention and then influences your action.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely don't think it's something to overcome. I just think we need to work with it on our side rather than trying to work against it.
Yeah, 100%.
And that, like, the first step, we say this over and over again all the time, the first step is always awareness. You need to become aware that A, you have it, and begin to sort of step out of your thought processes and your system one thinking every now and again, just to remind yourself that that's what you're doing, seeing where your attention is, perhaps what judgments you've made about something or someone that really you don't know are true or false. Like, just practicing doing that. You don't even have to change it or use your system two that uses a lot of energy, just being aware of it. Because, I mean, if you start with awareness and you have an intention, eventually your cognitive bias will start working for you and you won't have to work at it. Momentum will just slowly shift and you'll begin to move in that direction if that's what you want.
Yeah, I think just understanding that it is something that has kind of shaped our world and shapes the way in which we make connections and why we do things. Like, it's just such a important concept to be like, oh, this exists in the world and this is why there are people that are so different to me that can't see my point of view, or why we have such big conflicts, or, you know, why there's two sides of like a political party or anything, like, because we're always trying to, well, usually we're just trying to confirm our prior beliefs of what we've been told, which are from the experiences that we've had and the outcomes that they've led to.
And it takes a certain level of emotion out of the situation, because you both realize, like, if you come to a conflict with someone who has that awareness as well, and you both realize, like, you're just trying to prove yourself right, then it's not personal. Because I feel like we get in a conflict when one or both of the parties begin to feel like you're disrespecting the other person. But if we both understood that it was human nature and that's just how we operate, and then perhaps when it is productive, you would step out of that and into system two thinking and have a productive conversation about it.
Yeah.
And try and eliminate your bias as much as you possibly can in that point. That's why I think awareness is so important. Like, is if you can see it and clock it, then you have the power to make the decision and move into deliberation. But if you don't even know that you're just autopilot, then, you know, there's no room for it.
Yeah. I think another interesting part that we can like pull into this discussion is like confirmation bias, like with the algorithm on social media, because it is such a, like, it's a more of a visual representation of how it works. So like you and me will have different information pushed at us from TikTok and Instagram, because we have shown our view time longer on certain things and therefore our interest is different. So if the algorithm wants us to be there for the longest, then they're going to show us the things that we've previously spent the longest time on, which will perpetuate the cycle of confirmation bias. Because if we're seeing information that already is attached to beliefs and concepts that we are very familiar with and that we really agree with, that's going to strengthen our emotional attachment to that as well. So that then means that when we step out of that virtual world and into reality and have a conversation with someone that has different opinions with us, it's so hard, because previously we're trying to interact with people that are the same with us, just in group dynamics in general. But then on our social media as well, it's very group mentality, confirmation bias too.
I think there's another level to that because it's a pretty well-known idea that humans are inherently attracted to negative things. And I think social media, and it's very obvious in like the news, that you're often shown things that elicit an emotional response negatively. Because even if it doesn't feel good, you're drawn to it, and it's like a car crash. Like, you don't want to look, but you can't look away. And I think the algorithm then shows you the things that elicit the greatest response in you, because that's just the thing that you're most attracted to, because it's as far away from your beliefs as it can get. Like, you can see every extreme in the world on the internet with a click.
Yeah.
And that's not a real representation of real life. And you can be led to believe that this small minority of people is how everyone thinks. And you can begin to have like a resentment or a disdain or a judgment for these regular people out here when it's not a accurate representation of how people actually are.
I feel like just like realizing the impact of cognitive bias is an important step to then understand when it kind of comes up, and that it comes up all the time. So like your friends and the things you listen to and the choices you make, they're all in line with like core beliefs. And those core beliefs are like quite fragile to like your the identity of you and the concept of that you've built in your head. So it's like that's why it's hard to sit with opposing views or to not like immediately have a reaction for something that is completely the opposite for you, because it's almost like it feels like a personal attack, because it's like your story, your life story of who you are, and therefore it's like they're personally attacking you because they're the beliefs that you hold. But if you can kind of separate and realize like, okay, that's his beliefs, and no, they're not resonating with mine, but also like what is there that I could somehow resonate with, or I don't know, it's just kind of like a detached thing. It's like, okay, they're just speaking to these parts of me, or it seems that they're attached to me.
Yeah. You just need to detach from your ego.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
It's just realizing that like they're not attacking you, they're attacking like some beliefs you came to through your experience and through like the things you've witnessed and the things you've watched and the people that you surround yourself with.
Like, they're just thoughts that you made up and you decided made sense.
But they were confirmed because there was like a group of people or a large consensus that you saw that
Not
also
always.
believed that. Well, most of the time, it's like you try and choose a group mentality belief. It's more comfortable. They generally are formed because you want to like be a part of a group or like a part of a tribe. So they need to be consistent with that in order to like fit in and to have support. Like think like back to like survival and stuff. If you aren't thinking like the rest of the tribe, you're an outcast.
You build your identity around these things, then yeah, you will get triggered by someone who is questioning your beliefs. Because if they're attacking your beliefs, they're attacking you, which is like what you were saying.
Yeah. The first thing to do is just like having awareness that like you will try and confirm your prior beliefs because it's the most comfortable thing to do. And it's the easiest thing to do. So just understanding that thing is going on and it goes on for most people is a great first step to realizing how your thoughts are shaped and your beliefs are shaped.
Yeah. I heard a quote a long time ago that you don't have to believe everything that you think. And that kind of just like broke my framework for a long time. because that's just what we do. We think and then we believe what we think, and then we begin to build stories, and that just becomes the world that we live in.
And also, if we think about something that we don't agree with, it feels like we're doing something wrong, or it's been made to think that you're doing something wrong. And holding uncomfortable beliefs is important for making change and rewriting and questioning why you previously believed something too. So like also like why would you want to change your confirmation bias? Like what benefit does it have to you to not always go with your first instinct with the system 1 process?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Well, it depends. Like you don't, like I was saying, you don't necessarily have to or want to even, because it is very important. But that's why like awareness is just the only thing that you really want.
Yeah.
Like,
So it's not changing the confirmation, it's just like becoming aware that this is a concept or this is a process that it just happens naturally and that we can choose to tap into it.
just become conscious of it. Like understand that every thought, every belief, everything that you're doing, like it is in there. And if there is some things about your life or an emotion you're feeling regularly, or the way you like a part of a relationship that you have with someone is not serving you, then what beliefs have you built? What thoughts have you had? What things that have happened that you've built a story on top of that isn't serving you? And what decisions can you make to change that? Like for example, if you're having an argument with your partner, this happens all the time. Like if they don't take the bins out when they said they were going to, and you think, oh well, they just don't care. I have to do everything, and they obviously just are comfortable with me doing everything, and they're only considerate of themselves, and they don't care about me. Like that happens very quickly. And if you're not aware of this conversation in your head, then you can just begin to believe it, even if it may not be true. And that can build resentment, that can fracture the relationship and cause a lot of hurt. And that might be something that you're content with and like whatever, but if that's something that you want to change, then becoming conscious or aware of the fact that you do it all the time. And even like there are so many lines of thought that you can intercept at any time, and you're like, how did I get here? And even just that question can undo so much.
Like assumptions, if you're thinking about, oh, and they must think this and then that and that, and then you go, wait, hold on,
Like every
how
time
far am I away from the truth right now?
every time you think an extreme thought, like I think this sometimes, like, oh, that person, blah blah blah. I'm like, whoa, that's quite a crazy thing to say. Why do I think that?
Yeah.
You know, because like I know I'm not like a hateful person, so anytime I have feelings of that towards someone, there's obviously something going on there. And because of the fact that I know that I have cognitive bias, there has been some point along the journey where that has taken over the story.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I think if there's something you need to get done, or if there's like you're working with somebody on something and you both have to like work together and there's conflict because you have different beliefs or different expectations, that's when it's really important to understand their perspective and understand that they are just doing something that they think is correct because of their previous beliefs. And same with me, like I'm just doing or thinking what I think is correct because of what I've experienced in the past. And I feel like when there starts to be like elevated emotions or feelings or like responses, that's like a really important time to kind of like step back and go like, whoa, like there's a lot going on here. It's worth investing in that like thinking process and like having some uncomfortability in kind of like deconditioning some of my prior beliefs or manipulating them a little bit. Like it's worth doing that because this is going to cause conflict or it's not going to allow us to do our goal correctly. That is when it's important to go into the system too, thinking and think, okay, like how can I view this from a different angle, and why am I viewing it from the certain angle that I already am right now, and how can we reach, like, my goal is to get this task done, therefore to make it the easiest or to make it work, I'm gonna step into that to resolve it or to just understand their perspective.
Yeah. I think an example of wrestling with the cognitive bias in yourself, where you don't have to try and get through to the person struggling with their own cognitive bias, is like your relationship, when everyone's relationship to money. Like, I think that's a really good example of the fact that we've just made up pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Like, money doesn't exist, basically.
It's a system.
We've decided that this piece of plastic or paper has this amount of value, and this piece of plastic that has a number 5 on it is worth more than this piece of metal that has the number 1 on it. And everyone just goes along with it. Even though some person way back in time just decided that they were going to put a 5 on this and a 1 on that.
Currency.
Yeah. So any belief someone has about anything isn't even necessarily their belief or who they are at all. So, like, I just think about stuff like that and how crazy some of this made up stuff is, and it's easy for me to then to detach from beliefs in general.
And the importance of it.
Yeah. Like, it really doesn't matter. Like, we've all just come to our own conclusions. What really matters is those, to make sure those conclusions don't come in between the connection you have with someone. Because we're all the same. Like, I was saying this the other day on my story, like, regardless of your beliefs, like, right down at the core of your beliefs, we all believe the same thing.
What do you mean believe the same thing?
Or, like, we're all the same.
We're looking for the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
I
we're
would
all the
say
same.
that.
We're all human beings. We all want to connect. We want the best for ourselves and people around us. And eventually, society and civilization and the population has just grown to a point where it's impossible to have that level of connection with everyone. And so there's disconnects between groups of people, and different groups of people form different beliefs,
Different social
aka
norms.
religion and politics. And all of a sudden, somewhere along the line, we decided that a difference in our beliefs is justification for killing them.
For harm and injustice.
Because their difference in belief will kill us. Like, it's a protection mechanism between two completely made up ideas.
But they've just been so, like, hardwired and ingrained that it's, like, becomes themselves. Like, the belief becomes them.
Yeah. Just trying to be aware as much as you can and not letting it get in between you and other people as much as you can. That's all you can do, I guess.
I think just understanding that it's at the core of disconnect, and just knowing that it exists, and having awareness of the fact that it's all around us, and maybe with a bit more room for awareness and empathy, we can step into integrating their beliefs or accepting them for what they are more, which brings more peace and love and connection.
Yeah.
Should we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.